Today, it's all about leadership, but in a way you'd never heard before. Let's talk about it with Roger Parrott on Steve Brown, etc.
He's an old white guy, an author, broadcaster, and seminary professor who's sick of religion. And he's brought friends. Please welcome Steve Brown, etc.
Hey, I'm Steve, the aforementioned old white guy. We're so glad you're here. I say it over and over again and mean it over and over and over again. You always have a place at our table. Matthew Porter is, of course, here. He's the executive producer. Matthew's wife is worried that he's getting weight. Matthew told her it was just inflation. These lines are awful, but I didn't write them. Our producer, Jinx, is working hard in his little glass booth. When his kids were younger, Jinx child-proofed his home. But they still got in.
They did.
Our video director and one-man IT department, John Myers, is in his tech bunker. The saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. John tells us over and over again, if it ain't broke, don't even touch it. And Dr. George Bingham is the president of Key Life. And if you have the Key Life app, George suggests for your help, he asks for your help in testing out the donate button. You know, just
to make sure it works
and stuff. Yeah. And Kathy White is the soft feminine side of this program. Kathy, you manage my schedule, but somehow we both missed out on Talk Like Yoda Day this year.
You serious?
Serious? I am.
Matthew.
Oh,
you guys are such good sports. Thank you.
My joke is deadly accurate, and the rest, I don't know. I mean, did you know that my mom literally used to lock us out of the house during the day?
Really?
Go outside and would lock the back door. It was like a little jug of water, and good luck. I don't know about Kathy and Yoda, though. You're going to have to do some more research.
Hey, guys, I've been looking forward to this program today. We have guests on to talk about everything. And I'm a cynical old preacher, and sometimes I think they just talk, and sometimes I think, and I've done some of that myself. When you preach, you don't always live what you preach. And so I'm not just throwing rocks, but I'm cynical enough to think he should have waited another 20 years to write this book. But in the case of our guest today, Roger Parrott, I've been watching him for over 20 years, and I saw him take over an educational academic institution that was just about going down the tube. I had friends who were on the board there and knew of the discussions that had been made, and they decided to pick somebody that nobody in the world would have picked, not because he's not gifted. He is, doesn't have the credentials. He does, but because his theological perspective was in a different box, still Christian and still Orthodox, but out of the Reformed, truly Reformed Calvinistic box. But it's surprising what you'll do when you're scared. And they were scared at Belhaven, and so they called Roger to be their president. He moved in, and what's happened over the last years is nothing but astounding. People have stood back and said, I don't believe what's happened at that place. It's one of the outstanding colleges and universities in the country. The faculty are amazing. The staff are, and all under the leadership of the man we're going to talk about. He's the president of Belhaven University. That's in Jackson, Mississippi. He's been recognized as one of the 10 most visionary education leaders in 2021 by Education Magazine. Under his leadership, Belhaven was named one of America's best colleges to work for by the Chronicle of Higher Education, Roger's newest book, which I hold in my nicotine-stained fingers, is titled Opportunity Leadership, Stop Planning, and Start Getting Results. In other words, get off your posterior and quit having committee meetings.
Amen.
Roger, my life's verse is from Ecclesiastes. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. I don't do many goals, and I don't do great plans for the future. I have no idea what I'll probably be dead in 10 years, but I don't do those kind of things, and I've been criticized for it. Why didn't you write this book a little bit sooner? And I could have waved it in the face of the critics. You had to fight for this yourself. I mean, you kind of broke all the molds, didn't you?
Well, we did break the molds, and and people have called the book radical. But first of all, I got to tell you, thank you. That introduction is way too generous, and you're kind to say that I was the leader. But look, what's happened at Belhaven, only God could have done. The Lord's the leader in this thing, and I just had the joy to come alongside and help to make some of this happen. But it has been remarkable, and to be the leading Christian institution in the arts now, and the other kinds of things we have going on. It's pretty amazing. But yes, everybody expects us to produce a long-range plan with structures and beautiful growth charts and all this anticipation of the future. But COVID gave me the softball illustration. Anybody who had a plan 3 years ago doesn't have a plan now, because not one person had COVID in their plan. Nobody, zero. So if you thought your plan worked, it didn't work. It failed. And so really the book's a call to give up this structure around conference tables, around whiteboards, trying to predict their destination future, and instead really trust God for that future and go where God takes us.
We were talking earlier before we went on the air about writing this book being very helpful to organizations that are not Christian. And I figured that Roger could make a lot more money with a book like that. Actually, he's given all this money away, which he was smoking pot at the time when he decided to do that. But at any rate, I was thinking, this would work for everybody, but it really won't work for everybody, because this book is not just about leadership. It's about God and trusting Him. Right, Roger?
It is, absolutely. And no, it won't work if you take God out of it, it doesn't work. There has to be what I call a theology of trust, that your trust is so absolute and complete that God truly is sovereign in the world. And if you believe God's sovereign, either He's sovereign or He's not. So He's either sovereign over everything or He's not. If we really believe it, and we do, and we preach it, we've got to live it as well and trust Him for that future. So the book, what's been interesting since the book came out is I'm finding a lot of families are saying, this is true for us as a family. I mean, we're trying to make these plans for our kids and for their future, and all of us for our own lives. We've made a plan. It didn't come out the way we planned. It came out very different. I think most of us are shocked by how our life actually came out when God directed, changed direction, used roadblocks, put the things in our lives that brought us where we are today. And what you've done through the years, you said you've been watching me, but I've been watching you too. And what you've done through the years, you can't plan that. That just is beyond what anybody could orchestrate to happen. God has to have the desire for that to bloom and to grow the way that He likes.
Boy, that's so true. One time somebody asked Ruth Graham if she believed that God answers all her prayers. And she said, of course not. I would have married the wrong man several times. And that's probably true of our Christian organizations, our churches, our families, as you mentioned, and as individuals. You know, if you want to, and it's been said so often, it's a cliche, but it's true. If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. But according to Roger, if you want to see something happen that's important, that makes an impact, listen to his plans. Would that be a good summary?
Absolutely. And you know what disappoints me about planning is not that it just doesn't work, because it doesn't work. But the big issue is we're missing God's very best for us by being dependent on our planning. When we let go of our planning, we start to find God's best, which is way beyond what we could do. And I've got some illustrations that are pretty remarkable. What God has done when we let go, we get out of the way. And I'll make this distinction at the beginning. I'm talking about long-range planning. I'm not talking about operational planning. We plan to play football. We plan to teach students English. We plan to feed them the dining commons. But what I'm talking about is future destinations. That's what we're going to let go of, and that's where we're going to let God lead.
Oh, man, you're going to love this hour, and you're going to love this book, too. The name of the book is Opportunity Leadership. Stop planning. Start getting results. And we're talking to a man who has seen those results. So you listen to every word he says. And don't go anywhere. We're coming back. Hey, thanks for being with us. We're talking to author, university president, and my friend Roger Parrott about his new book. And it is a radical book because it's so biblical. A lot of the Bible is radical, counterintuitive. Only God could say those kind of things. So we would rather do it the way the world does it, and that's why we get into trouble all the time. Mm-hmm. The book is Opportunity Leadership. Stop planning and start getting results. And I'd like to mention that all of Roger's royalties from this book go to a nonprofit organization called Foundation for Christian Learning that supports Christian education and scholarship.
Roger, you made the distinction that opportunity leadership really focuses more on the kind of the strategic planning as opposed to the operational planning side of things. And focusing there gives the opportunity to really not miss God's best for the organization. Can you expand on that a little bit and talk about what you mean there?
Let me give you a quick illustration. We were about a dozen years into not doing planning. And just to put it in context, I've been in higher education leadership for 40 years. For the first 20, I was a traditional planner. I did the whole thing. I had the blue ribbon committees. I appointed them. We had the committee meetings. We made the plans. We did the brochure. You include in the brochure the picture of the person who's most against it, so they'll hopefully be for it. You give everybody a little bit of something, and nothing happens out of it. And so I've done all that. And so when we gave up planning, and really the board embraced it, the campus embraced it, takes a while. You don't do it overnight. If you switch to this overnight, you're going to get fired. So don't do that. This is a process. So we were about a dozen years into it. And so I went to my board meeting one day, and I laid down in front of them a piece of paper that said 5-year plan. And I'd chosen my words carefully to try to talk about it in the right tense, but essentially said, here's the 5-year plan. We're going to increase the enrollment 43%. We're going to raise $21 million of new gifts, which for us was a ton of money. We were going to build $31 million of new buildings. We're going to start 7 undergraduate programs. We're going to start 8 graduate programs. I said said, that's the 5-year plan. And of course, they're trying to figure it out because they know we don't plan. And so then, of course, brought the punchline, which was, that's not the plan for the next 5 years. That's what we actually did the last 5 years. Now, here's the distinctive. If 5 years ago I had brought you this plan with those numbers, we would have cut all those in about half and thought we were really doing well. And we would have probably hit our goals. And that's what we do in Christian ministry. We cut things down to what we think is a little bit of a stretch, but what we know we can hit, because for some reason we're scared to death we're going to ever have a failure of any kind. And somehow we're going to embarrass the Lord if we do. And so we cut these things back. And that's what I mean by missing God's best, because we would have built a structure and a plan to hit about half of what we actually did. And I did that same experiment with my board this spring. And that one was even more dramatic. And the interesting thing was, of all the topics that were on that 5-year plan that was looking back, not forward, all the topics, not one of them was on our radar 5 years before, not a single one. And that's how God works. When we get out of the way and we really let him do it. And Steve, you mentioned this is a biblical model. It is. I don't call it a new model of leadership. It's not new. It is a biblical model. It goes down to the foundation. And I'll tell you, when you embrace it, it'll make you trust the Lord like you never had before. Because it's a wild ride. It will.
Roger, I love this idea. And I'm coming to you as an unrepentant goal setter, plan maker. Like every beginning of every year, I sit down, gigantic page. This is not a prop. This is real. Gigantic piece of butcher paper. And I spread it all out and I plan and I get my pens and my papers and it goes on and goes on. And this year, about a week into this, I realized, you know what? I may have crossed over from planning into just arts and crafts. I'm just drawing pictures. And so for somebody like me, for a type A plus, how practically do you kind of deprogram from this traditional goal setting leadership thing into this opportunity thing? What do the first steps look like? How do you put it into action?
Yeah, it's a culture change. Organizationally, it's a culture change, and it's a culture change within the heart of the leader. You know, in leadership, especially in ministry leadership, we do two things. We raise money and we set vision. Well, if all of a sudden I'm taking vision off the table, what am I there for? So, instead, you're there to lead a culture that really brings out the best in everybody who's in the front lines of doing what God's called them to do, to help them think creatively, to help them move quickly, to help them take advantages of the ministry opportunities, and to really be sensitive to what I call the wind of God, and that image is important to us, the wind of God, to take the interruptions and go where God wants us to go. You know, how often do we see in the ministry of Jesus that he was headed one place and somebody came and grabbed him and he went to go someplace else? And, and if he said, well, no, I'm sorry, that's my plan and that's where I'm headed, I can't go raise Lazarus from the dead. I'm busy today because I've got a commitment for my plan. We've got to enjoy those interruptions of ministry. So yeah, there is, I think we have a comfort when we can plan, we feel in control, and you're giving up a lot of control, but who are we giving it up to? We're giving it up to the Lord and putting him in control. But somehow we've gotten this idea in ministry, whether it be a local church or whether it be a business or an educational institution like mine, somehow God tossed us the keys and said, okay, I picked you, you're in charge, you go do it. And I'll step back and I'll just let you do it. I don't think that's it at all. I think we really have got to trust him for these opportunities. And what I find when you live in an opportunity leadership culture, you get all kinds of opportunities that come, and you got to determine which ones fit and which ones don't. And then you also get ones that don't work out. I had one just this morning that I thought was a go, and I just got a note just before we started this recording that it's not going to go. And, there's a tendency to want to fight through that roadblock and say, well, I'll go fix it. No, God's saying something through that roadblock, and I want to listen to that and back up. And I sent a quick note to my team and said, well, the Lord's got something else for us. Let's let that go, even though we'd worked on it for 2.5 months. And there's a great freedom of leadership and joy of trust in that we don't get when we're trying to sit around on whiteboards. Well, here's what I know. The best plan I could come up with around a conference table is pale in comparison to the plan that God has for Belhaven University and for my life and for my family.
Roger, this is so good. And it's so radical. And it would change everything for everybody who's listening to this broadcast. The name of the book is Opportunity Leadership. Stop planning and start getting results. When you get the results, you can't even take the credit for it.
Exactly.
Hey, we're so glad you're with us. And if you are just joining us, you have missed some wonderful, amazing, and profound teaching on how one does leadership the right way, the way Jesus taught us to do it. We're hanging out with author and university president Roger Parrott, and you can keep up with Roger. That's Dr. Roger Parrott, by the way. You can keep up with him on Twitter and Instagram at RP Belhaven, at RP Belhaven. Roger, before the break, just before, we gotta pay for this thing. So we break for commercials, and I'd made a comment, and after we were off the air, you said, you're right. I don't get people that say that to me very often. So God gets.
I don't know. Every time I listen to you, I say, he's so right. I should have been listening to this a long time ago. But no, you're so right.
God gets the credit, and that is right, isn't it?
And that is right. And God gets the credit. And this is not a new model of leadership. It really is a biblical model of leadership, but it's built on such a deep level of trust. As I have talked to people about this, and as I have taught my campus about it and the board, I would always explain it. And I'd say, we all believe in God's sovereignty. We want God to lead. And so we're not going to plan. And they say, that's great. We do believe in God's sovereignty. We want to go where God wants us to go. We don't want to go anyplace else. But if that doesn't work, what's the other plan? What's the real plan? And the plan is there's no plan. That is the plan. There is nothing else. There's no plan B. And it comes down to the point that we expect God to bring us opportunities. And most Christian organizations and leaders don't expect God to bring opportunities. They think they've got to generate the opportunities. God will bring the opportunities. And when they come to me, we analyze them under 3 criteria: mission, gifting, and capacity. We got to know our mission so well. If you're going to do opportunity leadership instead of planning, you got to know your mission in a way you've never known it before. So you're so clear in what God has called you to do that nobody else is called to do. And then secondly, what's your gifting? What are you good at? And how do you effectively work in the best areas? And then what's your capacity? Sometimes we're all filled up, and sometimes we've got space to add on something new. But I live in a university environment with a team who we get a new project and we go, yeah, we can do that. And that decision is very quick and happens almost within hours, if not days. And most Christian ministries can't do that. We're so slow. We miss all the opportunities because we got to build a plan.
Roger, hearing how this kind of fleshes out, it seems like this approach might also result in a practical point of view from on a lot less wear and tear on your people. Have you found that to be true?
Oh, a whole lot less. Yeah, a whole lot less. I mean, first of all, you're not spending all the time in these dumb meetings that don't make anything happen. And everybody knows they don't make anything happen. That's the frustrating thing. It limits a dialogue. What I find is that planning homogenizes our strengths. So we don't really build on the things we're best at. We try to make everybody happy. It focuses on deficiencies. I mean, if we're going to talk all the time about what you don't have, everybody's going to be discouraged. Yeah, let's talk about what we do have. And that's what opportunity leadership does. So it's a whole different mindset. It's a different approach. And then it's a different way of operating. I mean, it's all about speed. Organizations are too slow. Colleges are way too slow. Christian ministries is too slow. I define the book that, they've got the DNA of a sloth. A sloth has a real DNA that if you jumped on one, they say it couldn't jump away. It doesn't have a DNA to move quick. And the church does that. And it's a DNA built in fear of making a mistake. It's built in comfort that we'd rather have mediocrity and live with that than an unknown future. It's built in intimidation that others have so much compared to what we have. So we're just not going to do anything. We're going to kind of bury our talent in the ground. And it's built on assumptions of what we can and can't do. And as bad as COVID has been, one of the great things about COVID is it broke down a lot of the assumptions. Churches can have ministry without people in a pew, and restaurants can serve without people in the dining room. And presidential inaugurations can happen without a crowd. There are things we can break down, but we get this DNA in our life, and then we become so slow that all the opportunities miss us. They go by before we even have a chance to move. I mean, I had one here at Belhaven this year that was really exciting to me. I was worried about these students being so discouraged after 2 years of COVID. I said, we got to do something. And we decided to give them a free master's degree. So every student who comes to our campus this fall or next fall as a transfer student or regular student gets a free master's degree when they graduate. That was an easy decision for us. But there's not one school in the country who copied us because they're so slow. They're still sitting in committee meetings while I'm enrolling students. It's crazy.
Wow.
Guys, we're just scratching the surface of a great biblical idea that works. It's practical because it's from God. And the name of the book is Opportunity Leadership. Stop planning and start getting results. If you're a leader in your church, if you're a pastor, this is the kind of book you want to study with other leaders as you plan for the future. Don't go away. Jesus is returning, and we are too. Hey, we're talking with Roger Parrott. The book is Opportunity Leadership. Stop planning and start getting results. Roger is a university president, a very, very successful one. And you can keep up with Roger on Twitter and Instagram at RP Belhaven, if you'd like to do that. Roger has been a very, in some ways, controversial leader. If you read this book, you understand why, but there's a lot that's in the backstory that has been very controversial. And one of the difficult things with Roger is that he has a Nazarene background and they don't know how to cuss. So I have offered on occasion to teach him how to cuss. And he said, I'm doing fine on my own. Abby,
And I can also preach Reformed theology better than as good as the Reformed folks can. So I'm all right.
Roger, when we first started out, I was going to ask just a simple, maybe like a simple question, like how has this concept of leadership colored your time at Belhaven? But you've gotten into that a good bit. And then as I was thinking it through even more, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to ask him about some specifics. And then I thought, boy, you can't get more specific than offering everybody a master's degree for nothing. That's pretty specific. But when you talked about deciding what your mission is and what your gifting is and what your capacity is, when you first went there, I mean, it's been pretty well established that there were some things that needed attention. Did you have to go right to the core of the university and like redefine the mission of the university? I mean, was it that specific?
Well, it's been a long time now, 27 years, so it's changed a lot. But yeah, I think the school had made some real progress in returning to its evangelical roots. They really made 3 commitments about 35 years ago. And one was to return to its evangelical foundation. Second was be purposeful about being inclusive of students of color. And thirdly was to raise the academic quality. And so through the years, before I got there, they had started a long way down that path and had done some great work on that. And then when I came, it was more about what's that really get lived out like? And so that's when we developed our worldview curriculum, which is the integration of literature and philosophy and Bible and history and how really worldviews stand up, about really building that into all the curriculum and then building out the academic quality. I mean, we are the top school in America in the arts, and there's nobody better than us. We're nationally ranked in all 4 of the arts. Our dance program goes about every 3 years to the Kennedy Center for what's kind of the Final Four of like basketball for collegiate dance. So it's a process, but again, it's God opening up one door after another. And I think probably because we're in Jackson, Mississippi, we're a little bit under the radar, and we could deal with some of these things easier than a school that's maybe had better well known at that time. But students come from all over now, so I think we've become hopefully one of the brand name schools. And along with that free masters, I should say, we also did another thing. I was worried about the art students. I mean, my daughter's a theater major, and so I'm an arts dad too. And I'm asking the question, well, I'm really glad she can act, but where are you going to get a real job? And, and every arts parent asks that question. And so I said, hey, let's give them all a double major. And if they take a double major and it pushes them into their 5th year, they can go for free. And so we thought, that's a great idea for the art students. Well, let's do it for everybody. And so we do it for all of our students as well. And so doing things that are innovative and different, when you have a culture of opportunities rather than plans, these things come up and moments come up and you can move to make those kinds of things happen. And I think that's what has helped Belhaven really ground its mission, because right now it's tough for Christian universities to be strong in their faith and not be rigid and be on the edge. And we are what we call a grace-filled community. We want to be as serious about grace as we are about truth. And if Christians would do that, as Jesus was defined by John, full of grace and truth, if we would be as serious about grace as we are about truth, the world might actually hear our message instead of turning off our truth. And so we work really hard to hold that core to our mission, but it's a challenging journey. But I think students like it because they know they're accepted and they're loved as they are when they come to us. And and Belhaven is not just for traditional students. I mean, we think about that, but we've also got tons of master's programs online, and we've got doctoral programs online. We even teach in China a doctoral program, which is kind of amazing. God brought that opportunity.
Wow.
Well, and I don't want to end it on negative, but, when somebody is like you and it's in your DNA to see these opportunities, you're going to fail some. How do you deal with failure?
Well, failure is an important part of what we need to do. And if you don't fail, you never tried some things. And so I don't see that as a negative. I think, unfortunately, the church sees that as a negative, but we've got to be willing to fail at times. And in the church, we're really bad at stopping things. There are things we try and they don't work. And when they don't, we need to stop. But we don't want to stop in the church. So what we do, and it's hard because we say, well, God led us to this. And so if it didn't work, what happened? We didn't hear God, or he didn't show up, or we didn't operate correctly, or whatever. And so instead of stopping, we put something else on top of it. And so we run 2 bad programs instead of 1. And we've got to be willing to stop some things. And what I found every time we failed, and we've had a number of opportunities where we started and it didn't work out. But what I found every time is God was preparing us for something else. And it's just like when you've taught at the seminary, or I teach, it's out of failures people learn the most, more than their successes. And God is always using those moments to prepare us for something bigger and tougher that's going to come. And so we need to embrace those failures and embrace those times when, it doesn't hit the mark, and not hold that up as a discouragement. But we got to create a culture that allows for that, because somehow we've gotten to the point we don't want our Christian leaders to ever not miss the mark. And so we just make the mark really low, and then we know we hit it. And we've got to change that culture around it.
Roger, you are such a gift, and you give gifts, and one of them is spending this hour with us. Thank you so much for doing that. We have about 30 seconds. You got something really profound you want to say? You've said.
Well, the last, I don't know if it's profound, but the last thing I'd say is, there's a big concept, and it's hard to get your hands around. So we use the image of a powerboat versus a sailboat. And the church has gotten good at building powerboats that look like the world. Instead, we've got to get out and get into sailboats. And we'd rather catch the wind of God in a sailboat and go wherever God's wind takes us than a powerboat that goes where we think God wants us to go and can completely ignore the wind of God. Let's get in tune with the wind of God, and let's go where he takes us.
Oh, so good. Thanks, Roger.
Thank you.
Hey, we learn a lot of things on this program, probably more than you do, because we get a chance to talk with the guests in the commercial breaks and before and after the program. But sometimes you get somebody that when they began to teach, and you talk to somebody like Roger, he's one of the most humble, compassionate, gentle men that I know. Sometimes you feel like you're drinking from a fire hydrant. We were talking during the break about this program, and it was one like that. I hope you listened. I mean, this is a game changer. And if you're a pastor, it's a game changer for the church. And for those of us at Key Life, this is stuff we listen to because it's really, really important in what it's about. And it's true for individuals too. God really does have a plan. He really is in charge. And it doesn't matter who gets the credit. Doesn't matter what your plans are. His are best. And if you can train yourself to listen and to watch and be move, and when he stops, stop, it'll change everything. It takes the pressure off. And at the heart of it, and Roger said this, is grace. If we were as serious about grace as we are about truth, we'd win the world to Christ yesterday. But we're not. We're too busy fighting battles about everything under the sun. when just a statement, I could be wrong. I can't throw rocks at you because I'm a sinner. I work for a God who is loving and kind, and he's got some plans for me and for you too. What a game changer. What a difference that would make. At any rate, get the book. Don't. It's called Opportunity Leadership. Stop planning and start getting results. Catherine, who do we have on next week?
Next week, we're going to do a bit of a sensitive subject. So just a little preparation. The title of the book is Redeem Your Marriage, Hope for Husbands Who Have Hurt Through Pornography. And our guest is Curtis Solomon, who's in the field of counseling, et cetera. And this is something he's lived through. So I think it's going to be a great hour, but it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, I think I'm going to let you lead it.
Yeah, right.
I think I may not show.
That'd be good thinking.
Spiritual as you can. I'm kidding, of course. I'm going to show even if I don't want to, and so is everybody else. And we hope you do too. Same time, same place. Between now and then, don't do anything we wouldn't. And that gives you a wide, wide berth.